Malcolm Bradbury's The Social Context of Modern English Literature offers a comprehensive examination of the intricate relationship between literature and the social forces that shape it. His work navigates through the evolving landscape of modern English literature, demonstrating how social, political, and cultural changes influence literary production. Bradbury presents a compelling argument that literature cannot be detached from its historical and social framework, and he meticulously traces the development of English literature from the late 19th century into the modern and postmodern periods, revealing how shifts in ideology, economic structures, and cultural paradigms shape literary form and thematic concerns. Bradbury recognizes that literature is a response to the socio-political conditions in which it is produced. He asserts that modern English literature emerges out of the tension between tradition and innovation, with writers grappling with the pressures of industrialization, war, and ideological transformations. The Victorian era, characterized by a relatively stable society with rigid moral and social structures, gives way to the uncertainties of modernity, marked by the disillusionment of the early 20th century. The advent of the First World War deeply impacts literary consciousness, with writers like T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf, and James Joyce redefining narrative form and poetic expression to reflect the fragmentation and anxieties of the time. He explores modernism as a response to social and intellectual upheavals. The modernist movement, which flourished in the early 20th century, arises from a deep dissatisfaction with conventional literary forms and an urgent need to represent the fractured reality of modern life. Bradbury underscores the influence of developments in psychology, particularly the theories of Sigmund Freud, which prompt a shift toward introspection and the representation of the unconscious in literature. Stream of consciousness techniques, non-linear narratives, and the rejection of omniscient narration become defining features of modernist literature, as seen in the works of Woolf, Joyce, and Eliot. Bradbury also examines the interplay between literature and political ideology, arguing that the two are inextricably linked. The interwar years witnessed the rise of politically engaged literature, with writers responding to the crises of capitalism, the Great Depression, and the looming threat of totalitarianism. The 1930s, in particular, see an emergence of writers who align themselves with socialist and Marxist ideologies, such as W.H. Auden, Christopher Isherwood, and George Orwell. These authors infuse their works with political urgency, critiquing the failures of Western democracy and exploring alternative visions of society. Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm, for instance, are direct engagements with the dangers of totalitarian rule, while Isherwood's Berlin novels depict the rising fascist tide in Germany. The Second World War and its aftermath mark another critical turning point in Bradbury's analysis. The post-war period brings about significant transformations in British society, including the decline of the British Empire, the rise of the welfare state, and the questioning of traditional social hierarchies. These changes resonate in the literature of the time, with novelists such as Kingsley Amis and John Osborne leading the charge of the Angry Young Men movement, which critiques class privilege, social stagnation, and the disillusionment of the working and middle classes. The literature of the 1950s and 1960s increasingly reflects themes of alienation, existential uncertainty, and the erosion of traditional moral values, as seen in the works of authors like Doris Lessing, William Golding, and Anthony Burgess. Bradbury's discussion extends into the late 20th century, addressing the emergence of postmodernism and its implications for literature. Postmodern literature, he argues, represents a reaction to both the excesses and limitations of modernism, characterized by self-referentiality, pastiche, and a questioning of grand narratives. Writers such as Salman Rushdie, Angela Carter, and Martin Amis embrace a playful yet critical approach to storytelling, often blurring the boundaries between fiction and reality. Bradbury highlights how postmodern literature reflects the fragmented, media-saturated, and globalized world, acknowledging the complexities of identity, history, and representation in an era marked by rapid technological advancements and cultural hybridity. An important dimension of Bradbury's work is his consideration of the role of the writer in society. He argues that the writer functions as both an observer and a participant in social change, constantly negotiating the boundaries between art and activism. While some writers adopt a detached aesthetic approach to literature, others actively engage with social and political issues, using their works as platforms for critique and advocacy. This dialectic between artistic autonomy and social responsibility is evident in the works of figures such as Samuel Beckett, Harold Pinter, and J.G. Ballard, whose writings confront themes of existential despair, political repression, and the dehumanizing effects of modernity. Bradbury's exploration of the relationship between literature and society also encompasses questions of cultural production and readership. He examines the shifting dynamics of literary consumption, noting how changes in publishing, education, and media influence literary trends. The rise of mass culture and the proliferation of popular fiction challenge traditional literary hierarchies, prompting debates over the distinction between high and low culture. The emergence of feminist, post-colonial, and multicultural literatures further complicates the literary landscape, bringing new voices and perspectives to the forefront. Writers such as Toni Morrison, Salman Rushdie, and Hanif Keisha challenge the canonical traditions of English literature, offering narratives that reflect diverse cultural experiences and histories.